Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of three opinionated guys with mics and too much free time. Strong enough to stop a speeding movie rumor, more powerful than a bad comic book event, able to waste hours of time asking stupid questions to people who have better things to do. It's Dave, Ben, and John. It's Superhero Speak.
Hey everyone, you're listening to Superhero Speak, and I'm your host Dave.
Ben.
And John.
Yes, the boys are back together again.
John, you sound as old as the main character in this movie looks.
Where's my freaking painkillers?
Are you using the same painkillers that the main character used in the movie?
Blackberry brandy.
There you go. Yes. So we are here, obviously, to talk about
Samurai Jack.
Yes, it's back.
Yes.
Gennady Tartakovsky has never been better.
I'll take your word for it. I never watched it the first time.
Actually, John, this is an intervention. Ben and I are a little concerned for you.
We need to convince you that you've got to let go of your addiction to DC and come over to the light side.
Wait. I need to drink until you guys sound like you're better.
But no, I heard there was a superhero movie that came out recently in the theaters.
Superhero movie might be a loose term, actually.
It is getting looser.
Yes. It was more of a character piece with people that getting cut up.
Right. With some enhancements.
So, of course, we're talking about this week the movie that came out last weekend, which is Logan, the final Wolverine movie for Hugh Jackman. And, it's been getting a lot of high praise on the internet.
They say third time's a charm.
It's Marvel as done by Quentin Tarantino.
That's one way of looking at it.
That's a good analogy. I like that one. If Quentin Tarantino directed a Marvel movie. So,
pretty much.
So yeah, I was going to say, let's start
with some high level spoiler free stuff for the people who may be uninitiated before they might realize, wait a minute, I should press the pause button and come back to this later.
Exactly.
So if you haven't seen it, what are you waiting for? If you're under 17, we kind of forgive you, but we know you can sneak in. You know you look older than you are. So go see the movie and then come back to us.
I believe on Slack when I was asked if it was good, I basically told them to shut up, get their car keys, and go see the movie.
So that was our high?
Slack. It was just that was his work Slack.
Oh, I see.
Is that our high level review of the movie here? So initial thoughts. I'll start with John, since he told people to shut up and go see the movie.
Right.
Basically, our levels go from 1, which is horrible, to go see the damn movie.
I mean, I don't think we need to rehash the previews. You guys know this is a movie. You've probably seen all the trailers. It was not bad. I would say, I think it's easy to say this is the best solo Wolverine movie to date.
Okay, I will give you that.
That said, I still think there have been better X-Men movies as well as better superhero movies.
Yes.
Are you serious?
I am absolutely serious.
There we go. So my initial reaction was, yes, that when I came out, I'm like, wow, it was a good movie. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, it was a good movie, but it wasn't the best superhero movie. And yet I keep seeing that over and over again on Twitter and Facebook, that everyone keeps calling this the best superhero movie of all. And I have some specific issues with it, which we'll get into when we get into our spoiler territory. But it was a decent movie. It was definitely worth the $9.95 for the tickets and get your popcorn and if you're a little squeamish, maybe hold off on the popcorn. But yeah, no, it was a good movie. It was the Wolverine movie we deserved 17 years ago.
Yeah, I'll give it that. So I guess that's pretty much all we can do spoiler free. We're going to dive into Spoiled territory from now on.
Right. So as those who listen to the show, you know the drill. If you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't want to be spoiled, stop listening now.
Or just put your headphones down, listen to the episode completely, let it delete off your device, and then when you watch the movie, download it again and listen to it then.
Yeah, that works for us. Yeah, I like that. So yes, yeah, and then you can see if you agreed with us or not the second time. Do
you mind if I throw in at the beginning here, because I know that John's going to be asking me why in about 30 seconds. So
okay.
I may as well just hit the ground running. So here's, in a nutshell, it was a very dark and dry movie. I like the fact that they didn't have to explain things with kid gloves because it was rated R. They leaned into the adult nature of it in that they left more to the imagination and left to be outright, spelled out for us. And I appreciated that. But there was just something about, so you get to the end and, obviously, spoiler, Logan dies. But, so there's a moment, there's that moment where Logan is, dying, impaled on a tree, and Laura is hovering over him, and you're supposed to feel something for that death. This is a heartfelt, that's one of those moments where even the hardest of dudes is supposed to cry in a movie theater, right?
Right.
And I didn't feel anything. I felt nothing. I was not moved by the death of Wolverine. And that...
You weren't
that's
watching.
Disappointing. It's disappointing. No, I was watching. First of all, and on top of that, I was not impressed by Laura's Silent Bob impression, and I was not... there was aspects of it that just kind of took me out of it piece by piece, bit by bit. And it just, in the end, it just didn't resonate as well as it seems to have for other people with me.
I will say that they project his death basically almost a third of the way into the movie, so you see it coming. There's no they're giving us left. They're going to make us think they're going to left. They think they're making us going to think left. Maybe they'll right turn at the end. No, they went left. There was no surprise in his death by the end of the movie. It was just saw that coming. And it's funny because the one thing that you mentioned that you liked that they didn't over explain everything. It's not that I didn't hate that, but I wanted a little more explanation on things. Just Wolverine's dying from his skeleton. But why? He had his healing factor for, a really long time and it didn't bother him. Now all of a sudden, is his healing factor failing? What's going on with him,
And by a really long time, we're talking 150 years.
Right.
So, he's not a young pup at this point.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was just, it was so, and then, again, they talk about the incident. So, okay, spoiler, Professor X is in the movie. He dies. But before he dies, he's suffering a degenerative, brain disorder, which is causing him to have these episodes, which are basically psionic attacks on anyone who's in the vicinity.
Right.
And apparently there's an incident that happens a year or 2 years prior to the movie taking place. They say in Westchester, so, where the mansion is, where 7 people died.
Yeah. So, which is to lead us to maybe assume that whatever remaining mutants existed, he probably accidentally killed them off.
Right.
Because it seems like in those attacks, Wolverine was able to fight through them probably partially because of his healing ability. Mm-hmm. But others, part of it is they're possessed and paralyzed from movement to the extent that they can't breathe voluntarily. And, that goes on long enough, you're not going to live.
Right. So, well, I mean, okay, so another thing that people need to know going into this movie is that this movie, though, is loosely connected to all the other X-Men movies, but in a way takes a place in its own pocket universe because it's the only way that it makes any sense.
How so?
How so?
How so?
Did you watch Days of Future Past?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
But that happened
That happened, but that got undone. So, what year? Well, here's a question: Days of Future Past. What year was that supposed to have happened?
2023.
Okay, so basically, what we're led to believe, if that were true, is that things were happy and hunky dory, and in 6 years' time, all mutants, died off, stopped being born, and whatever was left of them got killed off. That is a bit tight of a timeline. So, because that's how the stinger was at the end of that movie, is like he gets back to the future, with Marty McFly, and and everyone's alive, even Jean, and everything's fine, and that doesn't really. If that's 2023, and this is only 6 years later, this is
2024. This takes place in 2024.
No, 2029. I'm looking at the IMDb page right now.
Was it 2029?
2029. Right. So in 6 years' time, things go from there's a huge mutant population and everything's fine to there are no other mutants. And that's a little bit far-fetched for that to happen.
No. No. I think your timeline's a little screwed up because when his consciousness came back to his original body from the future timeline, it was present day, not 2023.
No,
yes, it was.
No, it paralleled the time that he did those things. So,
right.
So when the war was going on in the future, that was 2023.
Yes.
And that future got erased. But the moment that he's going to be out of sorts and only remember the misinterpreted version of the timeline is going to be in 2023.
No, yes. I don't think that's the year that they ended up in. I think the year they ended up in was like 2013 or 2014.
That makes zero sense. There's no way that makes sense. There's no way that makes sense. Why would he come back to a different time than he left?
It wasn't that he came back to a different time. It was look, timey-wimey stuff. I don't think it doesn't make sense because of the ages of the characters at that point.
I get what you're saying. It was a happy ending stinger. It wasn't really supposed to be realistically reflective. So we're supposed to ignore that it actually happened anyway, regardless of what they're going to do next. Because obviously their next movie that they're working on for the X-Men is probably going to involve the Dark Phoenix and may well involve Jean Grey dying, in which case it doesn't make sense for her and Logan to be around in that time frame period.
Look. So let's get off of that subject because, whether it doesn't matter.
Well, if accept that this is a separate timeline and a separate universe. At that, the CW has trained us well on that, so I think we can let that be a pass.
Okay, so a few things then. Number one, okay, if I go now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, number one, I think this is probably one of the best movies that I've seen. The acting was amazing, especially from what's her name, Daphne Keane, who was freaking 11 at the time and is probably Oscar bait for the next like 40 years. I think that Professor X got Patrick Stewart got the ability to add humor into it and basically show off his Hamlet acting chops. I think Hugh Jackman finally got to show off all the stuff he's able to do, a range of emotion he wasn't normally able to play. And I think that this movie, there are parts of this movie that were written to be, you have to catch this stuff, like the time they're with that family. It's a play on, it's a play on what Wolverine could have had, what any of them could have had. And then the deaths of that family is basically the writers showing us, or fate showing the characters that, yeah, you could have had this. No, you can't. And it's utterly tragic, especially since this family helped him out. And there was absolutely nothing you could do to save them just by being near them. So, I think the movie throughout, at the end, when Professor X died, I thought it was utterly tragic the way he died. When Logan died, the realization of what family actually felt like, because it just, what he said was, so that's what it feels like. Well, you go back, he never really felt like the X-Men were his family. He was always in the outs for one reason or another. And to finally have somebody who truly understood him, a little kid, this little girl, it's, it just, I felt it, So, I don't know, I think the movie was just utterly near perfect.
Okay. So just to key off of one of the things you said, so I did pose a question to our Slack channel, to those who have joined our Slack channel. By the way, if you want to join our Slack channel, you can go to our website and there's a link there. Sophia, also known as Wonder Woman, had posed a question about that line, the "this must be what it feels like" line, because she wasn't sure if she liked it, but she wasn't sure if it referred to death, fatherhood, or both. And that was a good observation. Yeah, I think it could have been all of them. It could have been. I tend to believe I read it as referring to death, because I think I think he had the opportunity to experience. I don't know that he had actually experienced fatherhood, but he could have experienced fatherhood in the 180 years that he was alive, if he so desired. Like, he's met people, he's been involved with people, he could have probably fathered a child. There's nothing that said that he couldn't. And for all we know, he did, but that we never heard of those stories.
But it wasn't fatherhood,
my point
it was
is, the
family.
one thing that I understand, but the one point that has eluded him in all of his life, no matter how injured he gets, he cannot feel what it's like to die because he never makes it that far. Like, even probably in the worst of the, throes of Phoenix, he still was as injured as he would get. He still wouldn't know the feeling of death.
Right.
And that was a unique feeling in that moment.
But the problem with that argument is nobody knows what it feels like to die until they actually do. So we could all say that line at the end then.
Except for Mr. Impossible and various other heroes who die and then come back to life.
True, but the point is, I got it as family because there are many points in the movie that were stressing the fact that they never felt like they belonged anywhere. He never Logan in any of the movies. And even in the comics, he never feels like he's actually with a family. He's always the outsider everywhere he's gone. And to have this little girl be his actual daughter and to care about him and actually understand, everything down to his basic feral instincts.
I guess. She's not really his daughter, though. She's his clone. It's a little bit different. I mean, I get it. There's a similar parody there. I get that there's a similar parody there. But I think that if I found that there was a clone of me that was made, I would struggle with the idea of calling that person or accepting that person as my progeny, because
she wasn't just a clone though. She wasn't just a clone though. I mean, there was other genetic material, and there's an explanation in the comics of what happened with the Y chromosome, and they had to replace it with an X, which made it female, made her female, and a whole host of other things. So
they
she wasn't
don't have to do that. They just have to remove the Y chromosome and duplicate the X, and you've got a female.
You don't that's not how genetics works, but okay. But then again, we're talking about comic book movies, so what the hell? But even so, she wasn't an exact clone, and it wasn't the nature of the relationship through the movie of, like how Superman treated Superboy in Young Justice, say. It was more this is a completely separate human being, not this is a chip off the old block, literally.
Yeah. I'm just saying the point that I'm making is that he could have very well had opportunity to experience fatherhood in the long life that he lived. I don't know whether he did or not, but the opportunity wasn't denied him. And, that's why I tended to equate this foreignness of this experience to death more than fatherhood, because death was something that eluded him more than anything else. Now, I'll put that to bed. It's not a big deal, because I want to talk about some other things in the time that we're going to talk about this. For instance, Caliban.
Yes.
So this character is interesting. I mean, so one of the points that someone had brought up was the fact that, Wolverine had this whole thing figured out, and it's part of the motivation behind his, reluctant anti-hero motives, in that he didn't want to help this girl. He didn't want to help the woman who was bothering him, Gabriella, because he was laser focused on, he was doing a job, he was saving up money, and he was working towards a goal. And that goal was to get enough money for a boat, and get on that boat and get off the mainland and into the water. And even that reality had holes in it. Like, Caliban is this character that's here, basically his surrogate wife in taking care of Xavier while he's bringing in the bacon. But this plan is sort of inconsiderate of Caliban, in the fact that, he's planning on getting this ship that's going to sit out on the ocean in full sun with him, and he's going to bring along this guy who's essentially allergic to the sun.
Well, that's what Caliban said, too.
Right, and he did. He pointed that out, and it seems, my bet is that Logan wasn't really thinking of him. He didn't really think of him. Like, there was sort of an imbalanced relationship between the two of them. Caliban was utilitarian to Logan, whereas, to Caliban, these were the last of his family, essentially. These were the last mutants. These were the people that he cared about more than anyone else in the world, to the point of he sacrificed himself to allow them to get free.
Right.
Did you talk about, so the reason why there are no more mutants
I don't think that was well explained, and that did bother me a little bit.
It was explained.
Okay.
It was
explained. The explanation was.
Well, the explanation was during the guy's monologue, this stupid monologue, after which the kids tore them apart, was that they had been using immunization and just basically spreading throughout the medical community. There's just this gene therapy that was stopping mutants from being born. That's why mutants have been born for 25 years. And the rest of the mutants were just taken out one after another, right? All through the Reavers. Yeah. So they were just all hunted down or died off, and no new ones were technically born.
So what you're saying is, when the movie universe that James McAvoy is in catches up to around the year 2000, they're all in for it, and they've got a new fight on their hands.
Yeah.
And it's this guy.
They could have gone with the legacy virus. They could have gone with the Scarlet Witch, rearranging reality, which are two storylines that are actually in the comic books, but that's what they went with, and it seems...
Or it could be Terrigen Mist.
Terrigen Mist... No, those are two actual storylines that
So is the one I just said.
Well, Terrigen Mist didn't affect mutants, though. It only affected Inhumans.
Yes, it does. It sterilizes them. That's a current thread in the Marvel Comics right now, that most of the mutants have to, either go off world or find treatment to not be killed off by the Terrigen Mists that are floating around the Earth.
Oh, okay. See, I'm just catching up on Marvel now, seeing as how but okay, that's interesting, because that sounds like, what is it? There were 3 legacy viruses. That sounds like legacy 2, I think. No.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's generally seen as a underhanded way for Marvel to refocus in the comics around Inhumans instead of around mutants, because Fox still owns the rights to the mutants in the movie.
Right. So back to Caliban.
Caliban, right.
I kind of felt like, because they just used him in Age of Apocalypse, and they did utilize him more in that movie to what his ability is in the books, and they didn't really utilize him in that way in this movie. It kind of felt like a waste. Like, it could have been any other mutant. It could have been a human helping Logan, because there was nothing about, other than the aspect of he can't go out in the sun.
Well, I agree and disagree. I think that he was underexplained and somewhat underutilized, but I think more of that has to do with, again, the way that they were, the way that the movie's written. It's not that he doesn't have those abilities, or that he's, not able to tap into them anymore. I think that there wasn't really a need to use them during the moments when they were doing things, when it was just the 3 of them. And once he was captured and being leveraged by the Reavers, he was purposely, I think, holding back. He claimed that it wasn't that, but I think that was a lie.
Okay. I guess. I just felt like, I don't know. I just felt another character would have been better utilized
Except,
there.
the use of his character might have been, just a mechanism to allow the Reavers to find Logan.
Right.
But
keep tabs on him and keep up with him.
yeah. But I mean, a case can be made that the reason why he still survived is because if they were using mutants to hunt other mutants, which is why there are so few left, he'd be one of the few that'd be able to see that coming a mile off and escape constantly.
Right.
So you're saying that if Logan had him, it'd be a little bit too much of a Deus Ex Machina for them to keep getting away. So by turning the tables, it made it a little bit more
And the reason why
suspenseful.
Caliban was there was because Caliban himself was able to get away constantly from any other mutants hunting mutants.
True.
But
Yeah.
Although we didn't see any of those, but yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the other Logan, the other elephant in the room.
So
I guess- go ahead.
X-24 to this movie was Deadpool to X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Yeah,
So go
I
ahead.
kind of feel that way too. I mean, I did kind of feel like maybe this is the closest we're going to get to what's the Dakin, the alternate Wolverine for a while when Wolverine was out of it.
Dakin.
Dakin, is that
Yeah.
his name?
Yes.
That guy. Like, this is the closest we'll ever see to that guy in one of these movies. But it wasn't that. It was something else entirely that they essentially made up. I mean, it's not unprecedented, but this version of it is unique. It bothered me. Because, yeah, I understand that he was a clone that was grown full adult size, I guess, instead of growing up from a child. But that doesn't, he seemed stupid. He seemed like he just didn't understand things and basically could barely follow orders. And I didn't really, it wasn't well explained. And it seemed like, I don't know, he seemed like a bit of a MacGuffin of a weapon.
See,
on that part.
I didn't see that. He followed orders. He started to go into rage. They didn't have very good control over him, but it seemed like this was like the beta test of him. So,
Yeah, he barely
because
followed him.
he was X-24, right? Or X-25, whatever.
No, X-24 is what they
X-24.
called him, which isn't a
Right,
comic
X-24,
precedent.
right. Okay.
Yeah, he was created just for this movie.
Okay, but if you go to continuing the movie, X-23 were the clones and the kids that they were trying to grow up and teach how to be soldiers, with the mutant genes. So this would be the next logical step is, well, we couldn't control them. Let's create something that we have full control over.
Yeah, but
Right, but how?
again, right, they didn't have full control over him. Now, if you go back to
It was a
X-Men,
beta test.
if you go back to X-Men Origins Wolverine, the first one, they had full control over Deadpool.
Yeah,
So why would they now go to a clone of Wolverine that they don't have full control over?
right. It seems
All
like
these years.
well, you're assuming those are canon with each other, which I try not to assume that Wolverine movie's canon with anything at all.
Yeah.
But even going on that,
They wiped that out, remember? They went back and wiped that out specifically.
Wade Wilson's brain and Logan's brains are a little bit different from each other. But regardless, it just bothered me a bit that he seemed like such a pardon the French, a mindless tool of Dr. Rice. And he seemed very, very similar in utility and in the way that he was presented as the various young CG versions of Terminators we've seen in recent Terminator movies. And it just felt a little flat. I didn't like how flat he felt and how I don't know how he came out of left field in the end. If there's more allusion to them having another weapon in their back pocket earlier, I think I would have had less issue with it. But
Right. And then another thing with him that kind of bothered me a little is they were trying. It felt like there was an unspoken parallel between Logan's rage and X-24's rage. like, oh, well, Logan's full of rage, so X-24's be full of rage. But he's a clone, but not in a, like, but he doesn't have his memories.
No, but
He
I always assumed that the rage was actually just part of his DNA, so to speak, part of his mutation, that he has this berserker rage that he goes into that is not emotionally driven. It's not, a factor of his history. It's just a factor of his mutation.
I've never felt that. I've always felt that it's related to the traumas he's had in his life and being rejected.
I think they actually illustrated that in the first in the movie that shall not be named, when he was a child and he killed his own father in a rage of fury with his bone claws. It was, and barely remembered doing it.
Yeah,
his mother had to drag him off of him.
I've always thought, and I've never read anything to oppose this, that the rage and the instinctual anger was always part of his DNA. I mean, look at it. I mean, she's his daughter, his clone X-23, whatever. She had the same kind of rage. She would fly off, Yeah. And his clone not having Logan's memories would be to the detriment of it. That's why he was uncontrollable, was because he didn't have a personality to try and get the rage under control.
Yeah.
So they were dealing with a blank slate that was all just a ball of anger.
Right. I did find it interesting that the adamantium bullet suddenly became intensely more powerful in this movie than it was previously depicted.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
Well, that was the Quentin Tarantino effect. But how is it that I'm the one that's defending this movie?
Look, I guess it's because here's the thing. I think it's context, because I think if we had gotten this movie a while ago, and maybe before we started seeing some of these dark, grim, DC movies that we've been getting, I would be like, all right, this is different and dark and gritty, and I'm on board. But I think that I've been tempered against that to an extent. Like, it's by having been subjected to Batman versus Superman and Suicide Squad and even Man of Steel, like, I don't want that from a Marvel movie. I don't want that type of movie from Marvel, even if it's Fox.
But this wasn't just anything besides Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Returns. Those two were dark and gritty, and they were cool. Everything else that they've put out so far, good old Zack Snyder, has been dark and stupid.
Right.
This is a movie.
My point is, I'm trying to get back to that point, and I'm not at a point yet where I can appreciate good dark.
Okay.
I'm just not there yet.
If nobody has your preconceptions, this movie on its own is dark, yes, but it is at times poignant, at times heroic, at times it's very good.
I'm not denying that, John. I'm not denying that it was a well done movie. I'm not saying that I hated it. I'm just saying that I didn't love it the way that so many other people seem to have loved it.
So my issue isn't the railing against the darkness as Ben is.
Darkness.
My issue is, from an artistic standpoint, I get what they were going for with this movie. I just don't like the story they wrapped around it to try to make it work. Like, I think it would have worked better if it was 50 years in the future, and everyone he knew was gone, and then he discovers X-23 or like, it just felt forced with throwing Professor X in there. That didn't work for me.
See,
in all honesty.
I have the opposite problem, because my problem now is that they've created an interesting and compelling replacement for Wolverine that we will never see again. Because X-23, this was a great introduction for her and a great establishing point for that character to be more than what she is, and yet we're stuck in 2029 in a dystopian future that's never going to get corrected because there's no mutants left to do anything about it, and there's no other heroes of any kind. Like, unless there was some means by which she can fall through a time portal and be in like the 1990s and part of the new the continuation of the McAvoy X-Men, New Mutants or something, then it was a waste of a character.
There is a way.
Is there?
You haven't heard this suggestion floating around on the internet yet?
Apparently I haven't.
They're making a movie that's coming out next year.
They make a lot of movies.
That's starring our other favorite regenerative mutant and his time-traveling sidekick.
Oh, that guy.
That guy could bring X-23 back from the future.
Which time-traveling sidekick?
Nathan Summers.
Or better known as Cable.
Oh, Cable, fun. Okay.
So you're saying that Cable might tow her into the past via a hoverboard?
Exactly. I mean, something like that.
As long as the hoverboard doesn't explode into fire.
It would be that kind of hoverboard, wouldn't it?
All right, well,
yes.
Okay, so you guys are two sides of the same coin, whereas I'm not. I'm using paper money.
I think we're all different kinds of a fork. Like
I have absolutely no issue with this.
I get it, but Dave and I are not on the same page. We dislike this movie for completely different reasons.
See, but the problem is, why are you disliking this movie? Because this movie, the cinematography was awesome. They actually used silence when they needed to use silence. They gave each character the time to emotionally mature on screen so that you could actually feel about them at the end. They gave Professor X one of the most callous and just unexpected deaths, and just a horrible way to go.
I get it, and I'm not disagreeing with any of that. All of that I think is absolutely on par. I'm not saying this was a horrible movie. I'm just picking on it first. Okay?
I thought that's what I was paid to do.
Well, you apparently were not bringing that game, so I went there first. So I'm picking on it. I did like things about this movie. I liked most of those things that you mentioned. I didn't like the fact that the entire Munson family had to be brutally killed for no apparent reason. That felt gratuitous to me.
And that had already been done the movie that shall be not named.
Right, but
the family that defended Logan was killed.
Right.
It wasn't gratuitous, though. It was a natural progression of the events that were going on. Of course they were going to die because the Reavers were chasing Professor X and Logan.
Right, and I had assumed they would have gotten out of there before any harm came to them. And
Logan listened to Professor X, who told him we'll leave at first light. He listened to Xavier, even though Xavier was going senile. So, but
so you're saying that beacon of hope was their fault, was their downfall?
Yes, yeah, it was, and it's tragic.
Isn't that a crappy way to write a story?
No, it's not.
I think it is.
This review can be R-rated just like the movie, Ben.
I know. So this is another thing I heard about this movie today was recently, there was apparently a different version of that dinner scene that they had with the Munson family, where in there talking about, their fake family that they were, Jean Grey came up as Logan's, late wife. And the director decided not to include that conversation because it darkened the only light scene in the entire movie. And, which I agree. I'm glad he made that choice. It'll probably be in a deleted scene in the Blu-ray, but there was not another light scene anywhere in this movie. It was grim the entire time. Everyone you could care about got killed, and there was, even though they got away in the end, the hope was bleak.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was. It was a slice of life. It wasn't a slice of their life, at least. But it wasn't meant to be lighthearted. You don't need every movie to be lighthearted and to end with an uptick. And this is coming from me, the guy who doesn't like watching movies unless the hero prevails at the end. But the way this movie was done was just artistically, it was awesome. It was near perfect. I think I have no problem with the way it ended. Because it told a story of a version of events of how the world reacted to mutants and how it was the end of the time of the mutants, or near the end of the time of the mutants, or at least a denouement until they come back somehow. I mean, it did end with some hope. All these kids with mutant powers are going off, and they apparently already have a leader. They've got their own Wolverine. They could do some pretty cool shit after this. I'm thinking X-Force, but you gotta. And there was plenty of lighthearted moments, like X-23 on the rocking horse,
Yeah, that was in the preview, though. That was in the trailers. That's part of the problem. Those moments got ruined, spoiled, because they were already in the trailers. And that's another thing that bugs me with the way that movies are marketed these days.
But that's
I get that you need to make a trailer that's enticing and draws people in, but don't give away every one of those cute little moments. Especially when they're so sparse anyway.
All right, guys. You know what? It sounds like we are kind of torn on this movie. So why don't we take it to our audience? Oh, I already did that. So I ran a poll on our Twitter today. And here was the question that I asked.
Was the answer Trump sucks?
The poll was Logan the best comic book movie of all time? Please reply with your all-time favorite. Okay?
Uh-huh.
And here were the possible answers that they could choose from.
Uh-huh.
Yes. It was good, not the best. I really didn't like it. And wait, what's Logan? So
what was the breakdown?
So anybody who answers, wait, what's Logan, we kick them off the Twitter feed, right?
No, we still want them to listen.
Yes.
If they said, no, I was busy watching Gotham, then we kick them off the Twitter.
Exactly.
I agree with that.
So the overwhelming 57%, so it's not really close with the other three, is it was good, but not the best. Okay? I will say the second at 32% was yes.
That's pretty high.
3% of the people didn't like it, and 8% said, wait, what's Logan?
So 8% went for the ironic answer.
Possibly.
Yes.
And were there any comments or contributions?
Yes. Open All Powers Pod, those guys said that Sin City is the greatest comic book movie ever. Mm-hmm. Well, for me.
Okay, close.
Brandon the Movie Nerd said The Dark Knight is his all-time favorite movie. And there's this other guy who replied, it's a tie between the Deadpool movie and Spider-Man 2. And that guy was Dave's WB. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know if we can trust that guy. He's kind of a weird dude.
Yeah.
So,
see, I'm going with the Cinema Snob and Comics Explained, but
do you have something to contribute from them, or are you just name dropping now?
No. I'll. So, like with Cinema Snob, the guy he had with him that was doing the review had some issues along comic book lines with, like, say, the X-24 clone, the same kind of issues that you had with it. But overall, they all agreed.
No. I want something to be clear here. And Ben and I almost got into a fight for me not quite understanding what he was saying earlier. I understand that comic book movies are not 100% translations from the comic books. Yeah. And they're made to appear to a broad audience. And I don't care that, there was never a Wolverine clone. It just felt lazy. Like, there could have been so many other ways to have a main bad guy for him to fight than a clone.
Okay. Did the clone change into something else? Did he suddenly grow muscles and become this grotesque, huge monster thing? No. Did the clone suddenly realize, I can be a good guy and suddenly switch sides? No. There's so many other ways that this could have gone wrong, but they played the clone basically straight. They played it.
Well,
it was
they
a clone.
Played the clone dumb, is what they did. I could have seen an interesting story where, he saw a kernel of recognition when he saw an older version of himself, and maybe had pause or hesitation.
No, that would have been the worst thing that could have happened, because that's the comic book way. This movie is based on a comic book, but the storyline is a movie. This is a sad story, not a comic book movie.
I get that.
It just happens to have Logan and Professor X in it, and and X-23. It's the way movies should be made. It's a movie that's made on personality and situation, not on I've got listeners.
By the way, based on comic book.
That's a really, really long stretch.
Based on comic book continuity, X-24 is not dead. So go ahead.
But
it doesn't matter the continuity, because X-24 is a clone. So even if they killed that one, they'll just make another one.
Well, that's true too. If they got his DNA, they could always make
around
another.
him.
Yeah.
Like the doctor died, didn't he? Dr. Rice?
But okay, let's just assume.
But in the comics,
even these
Wolverine,
days they have a backup of the data and how they made it back at the lab.
Wolverine, in the comics, Wolverine was blasted with a nuclear bomb. His skeleton wasn't destroyed because of the adamantium, and there was a little piece of flesh left on it, and that was enough to regrow him completely.
So, anyway,
Godzilla did it first.
So, here's my argument with you, Dave, or John. It isn't anything about the canon. I could care less about canon. None of these movies follow canon, and that's fine. Most of these movies that have been successful don't present themselves as comic book movies either, and I like that too. I mean, you look at the Captain America movies are not comic book movies. The Iron Man movies are kind of comic book movies, but only a little. A lot of the successful MCU movies break the mold and break it hard, as far as being a comic book movie or not. And that's been a great thing. And Logan is no different from them in that respect. Yes, it's a drama, a gritty drama that follows paradigms of other types of movies I don't care for either, like Westerns and those kind of dark movies. And I don't begrudge it that. That's not what I have issue with. My issue is I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't buy into it, and it wasn't really my thing. That's really what it boils down to. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm not saying no one should see it. I'm just saying it wasn't my cup of tea.
So tell me how you really feel.
I just did.
You shouldn't hold things back. You should have some blackberry brandy next year.
and along those lines, I'm not saying it's because of continuity either. I'm saying that I totally understand what they were going for. I get it. The redemption story, the killer soldier at the end of his life looking back and regretting story. Yes, I get that. The father-son relationship with the professor, and then the father-daughter relationship with X-23. I get all of that. And yes, it was, and maybe this is part of where Ben's coming from too. As a parent, I didn't, when I usually watch a movie like that, I get welled up, it does something to me because I do have a daughter, and I do have a father, but I didn't feel that in this movie, and I don't know 100% why. And maybe it's because there was all these little things that were nagging at me, and as I started pulling those threads apart, it was this movie doesn't really make sense in the long run.
And along those lines, it wasn't as if I was sitting in the theater and pulling it apart as I was watching it. I tried. I sat there and I tried to do nothing more than just eat popcorn and enjoy the movie and just ride out the ride of it. And still, I hit those moments that should be pulling at my heartstrings, those moments that, should be surprising me and moving me, and they didn't. They just didn't. And I'm not saying that the movie failed in that way per se. It just failed me in that way.
Okay. See, I don't see it any way the way you guys see it, I guess, because I didn't see this as a comic book movie. I saw this as a movie that just happened to have comic book characters in it, but it was
I'm not
written
disagreeing with that. I'm saying the exact same thing. I'm saying the exact same thing. I'm just saying the genre that was not comic book movie, I didn't care for. You could, listen, an example similar to that. Like, there's the horror movie that's in the theater right now called Get Out that was written by and directed by Jordan Peele. People are raving about that movie, saying it's groundbreaking horror movie. It's great and everyone should see it. I have zero interest in seeing it, and even if I did see it, I might not like it because I don't care for horror movies. Period. It's not my thing. Similarly, you could tell me that some movie that's out right now that stars my favorite actor is like the romantic comedy to rule all of romantic comedies. I hate romantic comedies. I'm not going to enjoy that movie. You know? And this is where I'm coming from on this.
Coming out next year, romantic comedy with Phoenix and Logan.
My point is, yes, you're right. You're absolutely right, John. This was not a comic book movie. This was not scripted as one. It was just, a gritty, dark, man against the world, gritty thing. No, just let me finish. It is, for what it was, it did a great job. But it's not my type of movie. I'm not interested in this type of movie, and so I didn't get moved by it.
You say it's gritty and dark. See, it wasn't gritty and dark. It was tragic. There's a difference between the two. There is a real, actual, tangible.
And it's still not my wheelhouse, regardless.
Right, that's fine. Okay, but for those people who, like very well-made movies and are interested in comic books, this will probably catch a really large cross section of comic book aficionados, because it was one of the most well done comic book movies there is.
I have to correct you on that, John. Like, look, yes, was it tragic? There were very much parts of it that were tragic. Was it gritty and dark? Oh my God. When a 11-year-old girl throws the decapitated head of the person that she just killed to the other guys and then starts cutting them up, that's dark and that's gritty.
I mean, that's like true grit dark. That's like, what was that? I don't know. There's some really dark movies
that's
it falls
horror
right
movie.
along the line to. The Old Men Have No Country, whatever that was called. Like that, those types of movies. That's the class that this is in. And those are dark, dramatic movies, and I was not a fan of those movies either. I'm not saying no one should see this movie. If people are into that, go for it. It's well constructed for what it is, but it wasn't my thing.
I think people should go see the movie. Regardless of what we think of it, I think people should go see it. I think it was, like, I'll say, Patrick Stewart is an amazing actor. He did a great job of depicting somebody with an Alzheimer's type disease.
It was dementia, supposed dementia, and then having seizures that were causing the psionic waves that were killing people. And
right.
So,
okay.
Yeah, but he did very well.
He depicted that well.
Right. Yeah.
He depicted that state well. And it's funny that obviously, you know why they set these paradigms, that when they were having dinner, he was the granddad and Logan was the dad, even though age-wise, it should be the other way around. But,
yes, but you wouldn't know that to look at them.
No.
By the way, just to mention, the guy who directed this, what's his name? James
Mangold.
Yeah. So he also did Vegas, was it 3:10 to Yuma, Walk the Line, Kate and Leopold. So this guy...
Yeah, I'm surprised this didn't have a Johnny Cash soundtrack, honestly.
It did at the end.
It did.
Well,
at the end,
thing,
yeah.
The whole, from beginning to end, it could have had a Johnny Cash soundtrack.
True.
All
at the end, he did bring out the Man in Black, though.
I mean, we can beat this movie to death.
I'm not beating it. I'm trying to save it after you viciously beat it in the back of a freaking...
And its healing factor might be failing, but it's going to keep coming back.
Yeah.
So here's an important question I want to end on, because everyone who's been talking about this movie hasn't been talking about one very important factor. And I think it's something that needs to be discussed.
And it's not Logan's healing factor.
It's not, but it's kind of along those lines. So, Hugh Jackman.
Yes.
Has played Wolverine
for
17 years now.
Yep.
He has been Wolverine. He has been Wolverine in every X-Men movie that's been made.
Yep.
Even if it's just a cameo, he has been in every single one.
Like Stanley.
Well, he wasn't in Deadpool, but that's the only one so far.
But that's, I mean, that's Deadpool stands on its own because it's not really an X-Men movie. It's Deadpool.
I consider it an X-Men movie.
You
There were
can
X-Men
tomato
in it.
tomato. Yes, there were X-Men in it. Now, of course, Hugh Jackman is not going to reprise the role anymore. He has said he would only come back if they had him in an Avengers movie, which we all know will never happen.
Right.
So, where does Fox now go with this? Because it's and the reason I ask, and I want to bring this up, and I think it's a good parallel, and even though it's not as strong of a parallel, Marvel built their universe around Iron Man, right? And, eventually Robert Downey Jr. is going to stop playing the role.
Right.
But in the X universe, they've recast everyone with younger actors except for Hugh Jackman.
Right. Because
So
here's my quick take on that. My hot take on Hugh Jackman and Wolverine. I think there are plenty of stories they have yet to mine in the X-Men universe and the expanded X-Men universe of things like X-Force and X-Factor and Excalibur and Alpha Flight and whatever other things.
Alpha Flight.
And New Mutants. That was a thing.
I know, but
It's a mutant-related thing. Just let me continue. Of all these things that they can mine for the cinematic, for the big screen, over the next decade or so, I think they have plenty to work with where they can work around Wolverine for a bit. I don't think he needs to be a presence as a character consistently. Like, first
that's
of all,
right. Replace him with Deadpool.
I'm just saying that there are ways that they can, like, he doesn't need to be in the spotlight. He doesn't need to be the center of every story. I think it'll be great to see. I mean, he was only a cameo in First Class, and First Class was a great movie. And I think that they can do more movies along those lines where he's not plot pivotal. Where he's not essential to it, in which case they don't even need to recast or explain away, his absence. They can just have the offshoots be the offshoots and have the stories be the stories. And even if they're adapting it from a story that traditionally had Wolverine in it, they'd be fine to replace him somehow with someone similarly powered.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting at here is we've pretty much accepted we've pretty much accepted everyone being recast except for Hugh Jackman. And is it like, does he own that role? Is he the iconic Wolverine, or can somebody else play him?
I think it would feel weird. Like, unless they were rebooting the entire X-Men universe from scratch somehow, it would feel, again, well, yeah-ish. I mean, you can say that the reboot that they did with the new cast wasn't really a reboot. You could technically shoehorn those continuities together as being one, just in different time frames, but regardless of all the plot holes. But my point is that in my mind, I would rather not see Wolverine recast, and I kind of would rather not see Wolverine brought back if they didn't have to. Like, just be creative with the stories and write good movies around other X-Men for a change.
So I'm hearing you. You've had enough Wolverine for one lifetime. I get it. Okay. How about you, John?
I see. I tell you what. Have the Enterprise go back in time and reboot this timeline and bring in all new actors. Yeah, I think they could go with other. They could go with other primary characters that they could center these stories around, or they could just go with the old ensemble cast thing where they just follow a bunch of characters around, or they have a number of characters that string all these new stories together. Or they could just sell the rights back to Marvel or lend the rights back to Marvel and make as much money as Sony did with Spider-Man.
Will make.
Well, yeah, whichever. Is it just, well, will, definitely. But, I don't know. To recast Wolverine would be very hard. I mean, there are some, rumors out there on people who might fit the bill, but
I'm not even
they're already
worried
looking.
about I'm not even worried about who. Like, I have no doubt that they could find someone that, and initially when similar to every other one of these casting things, you might, you hear the casting like, wait, what? Who? Him? He doesn't fit that part. What role haven't we said that about? And yet,
Mhm.
Well, they said
and
that about Hugh Jackman when
right,
he took the role.
right.
It's like,
And my point is that once he gets in the role, I'm sure that whoever it is can fill it just fine. My concern is that if they try to shoehorn a recasting into the continuity that they're continuing, it will feel off, and it'll take me out of it.
sure.
Right.
I do know one character that they could definitely center most of the rest of the stories around, though.
Is she cute?
Squirrel Girl.
They don't have that one. She's not a mutant.
Nope.
Doesn't matter.
Marvel has her. So I agree with Ben. I've had enough Wolverine for a while. I think it wouldn't feel right if they brought someone else in right now, and it's just, let's have other stories without him in it.
Let me break into your just burns. I just want to point out the irony of the fact that we three old guys are sitting here saying, well, there could never be another Wolverine, which is probably the same thing people said when Sean Connery played 007 and they were going to replace him. And like several other types of characters in other movies and series and stuff. It's probably a generational thing where we've seen, like you said, we've seen him for 17 years, and
Maybe.
you can't imagine it. But somebody who's just coming into the movies probably definitely could.
But it's not equal. It's not the same. So, like with the Sean Connery example, for instance, when they finally did replace him, I'm sure there were people who thought this is going to be weird, and they did make some falters. Like not every Bond was perfect, but there was no continuity to play off of that mattered. Like, they could essentially go, do like almost every James Bond movie has been fairly well encapsulated to itself, or at least encapsulated to the actor. So like, there was some mild continuity between the Pierce Brosnan movies. There was a mild continuity between the Sean Connery movies, and obviously there was a strong continuity between the Daniel Craig movies. But outside of that, they haven't had any continuity across those roles changes at all. So it's easier to accept that change. And again, that's why I'm saying that, like, if they were to do a clean slate, go ahead and recast Wolverine. I don't care. I'd like it if they didn't make him the main anchor character for every single movie, but it wouldn't be weird for them to recast him if the movie was centering around a brand new reboot of the X-Men.
Right.
But to replace Hugh Jackman with a movie starring James McAvoy makes zero sense to me.
Dave, I broke into your little spiel there, so go ahead. Sorry.
No. So that's fine, so then that just kind of brings me to another question that we can kind of wrap this up on before we rate and give our final thoughts.
Or I kill Ben, or Ben kills me. Either way.
I forgot my batleth. Damn it.
If Marvel and Fox were to come to some small agreement and would allow Hugh Jackman to play Wolverine in an Avengers movie, would you want that to happen?
I don't know.
Now remember, now what I'm saying is a small agreement where they just allow Wolverine. So there's no other X-Men brought over, no other explanations.
First of all, I think that the House of Marvel is not greedy enough and too intelligent to do something like that, because that would feel really awkward. That would be really weird to have just this one mutant cross over into this, like, unless there was some sort of cross-dimensional explanation for it, like that they exist in different versions of Earth, and there's other reasons that there's cross-dimensional hopping happening already.
Legion could do it from the TV series, so there you go.
Yeah, okay. But my point is that I don't think Marvel would do that, because Marvel is smart, and they know what they're building, they're thinking ahead, and they're putting story before profit or any other number of things. They're trying to make the best versions of these movies they can, and of these stories, and keep people interested and compelled for a long time. It'd be a money grab to try to pigeonhole Wolverine into this world at this point, with no other mutants having existed, and it'd be confusing to audiences. And I think it would also feel awkward when you didn't get him back again, when it was just a one and done. So no, I wouldn't like that.
Okay. John?
I don't think Marvel would go for that. For much the same reasons as Ben. There'd be no way to write that properly without it being weird and jarring for whatever storyline they were trying to fit in. Unless the storyline was completely off the hook and included Howard the Duck and Deadpool. There's no way they could write that storyline in any way that would be able to keep somebody into the narrative that they were trying to portray.
Now, Deadpool, I would be a little bit. Now, I wouldn't see Marvel pulling Deadpool into their movies, but I would see Marvel being willing to let Deadpool pull Avengers into one of his movies, or some of them into his movies, or at least nod to them existing in some way. Yeah. And that would be fun, and I would be okay with that. Okay. Because you're not supposed to take Deadpool movies seriously.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, if that were going to happen, you'd have to give it to an A-class writer like J. Michael Straczynski or Joss Whedon or somebody like that who could, at least give it an A effort.
Well, Joss is going to be pretty busy writing the second season of Firefly and the relaunch of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I don't think you'll have time.
What fantasy world are you living in?
The one where those things have actually been news items in the past couple weeks. The one where he's been talked to about them and in his level of interest.
Have you been reading Reddit again?
I do read Reddit, but that's not where I read these things.
InfoWars?
No. Fox actually expressed an interest in doing a second season of Firefly, but only if Joss Whedon was on board and all the other actors were on board.
But the guy who played, well, it'll be hard because the guy who played Book died, but
a lot of them have other projects going on, and they're not going to leave to go back to a show that was canceled after 6 episodes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could see doing a reboot, but not a continuation off of what they gave it already. Oh, and real quick, John, sorry. I was looking at this and I wanted to verify this. You used James Bond as an example. So everyone's familiar with the character Felix Leiter. He's his CIA counterpart.
Yeah.
He was played by 3 different actors during the Sean Connery run on the James Bond movies. So yeah, they weren't that worried about continuity back then.
True. Very true.
So yes. Hey, I am not dissing a Firefly return.
No, I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. I'm just saying he's got a lot of fires being stoked by various people that, whether he does them or not, that's his choice.
And I don't like Straczynski. I'm sorry.
We've
had this conversation before.
Let's not go down this rabbit hole right now. How about, is it rating time? We going to do capes?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll start with Mr. Proof Positivity, John.
Gods. That's not me normally. All right, fine. Well, I've already, in addition to everything we've talked about, one of the things that got me about this movie was that in most of the superhero movies, the superhero, like Batman, gets hit, thrown into a steel girder, which bends under the pressure, and then he gets back up and, wipes a little blood off of his mouth and runs back into the fray. Superman gets stabbed with kryptonite and gets back up after it's taken out, and everything's great. The literal, visceral pain that is portrayed in this movie constantly in every scene of just every move he makes of Logan is just painful. And then the injuries that he gets, and then how he keeps slowing down farther and farther as the movie progresses, as he gets more damaged and his healing factor isn't helping it. But the way it's portrayed makes you literally cringe sometimes at some of the punishment he's taken and the way he looks. I mean, he's been playing this for 17 years, but he looks damn good. But the makeup, but in this movie, the makeup and the what they did to him, he looks like he is like 20 miles of really bad road. So, just it's amazing what they've done and how they're able to portray the fact that this character is wearing down to the end. So, between that and all the rest that I've said, I'm giving it 9.5 capes. This is, this is, I mean, yes, it's a movie that was made, an excellent movie that was made that happens to star comic book characters, but that should mean that comic book people have finally gotten a good comic book movie. And it doesn't matter that it's kind of ending part of a franchise. It was, I hate the fact that we get a movie like this as the ending to a franchise. I would like to see a franchise start like this, like with Batman Begins. But this is what we've got, and I'll take it anytime. And I think if this hadn't had the Marvel moniker on it, I think some of the people in this movie might have actually been up for Oscars. So that's it.
Might have been. There's still an opportunity for Oscars around this movie. It's
early.
This
came out after the Oscars. So,
I know, but because it's got Marvel in it, I'm not holding my breath.
Hey,
if they do, they should.
DC got nominated for awards this year for crappy movies. I'm going to say shitty movies. They got nominated for shitty movies.
They won for a
shitty movie.
What was it, for sound or something?
No,
makeup.
Makeup.
Makeup for
Suicide
Squad. Yeah. Okay.
All right, Benji.
So, I think I've made a lot of my opinions clear in this episode already, so I'm not going to rehash all of that. I'm just going to say that, like I said before, this was a fine superhero movie. I'm not begrudging it. If people like it, that's fine. You're entitled to enjoy it. It wasn't my thing. It was dark. It felt a little too DC to me, and I don't think that that's really where Fox needs to go with these types of things in general. I mean, I guess it fit what they were going for, but it wasn't my cup of tea. So I'm going to give it 5.5 capes.
Wow, two extremes.
Dude.
So don't put your DC in my Marvel. All right.
Dude.
So my final thoughts.
Who are you going to side with, Dave? Who are you going to side with?
As I said,
Batman. Always side with Batman.
Artistically, I totally understand where this movie was coming from. Again, the relationships, the man on his last legs, the grittiness of it. I get that. And yes, it was just as John said, it just happened to be that kind of movie that starred, superheroes, which is kind of what Marvel's been doing for a while now. But, in the grand scheme of things, is this the direction we want all of our superhero movies to go? Me, personally, no. Like John said at the beginning, I want to see the good guys win at the end, not die. So that being said, and again, I enjoyed it for what it was, but once I started pulling up those strings, a lot of things fell apart for me. So, if you guys, if anyone's out here listening wants to follow up on some of the things I've said about the X-Men Origins Wolverine, go listen to So Wizard, because they were so good at pointing out there are like 4 or 5 things that were lifted right out of that were reused in this movie. And that really bothered me when I thought about it. It's like, crud. So with all that being said, I am going to give it 7.5 capes. And that's not a compromise.
No, that's fair.
It's where I feel it lands, So yeah, I think that's where I'm keeping it. So
I'll just have one more thing to add here, Dave. You know what we
wait. Before you say that,
Okay.
real quick, I just want to give a reminder to everyone listening. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to check out superheroespeak.com if you're not listening to us there. Check out all of our social media links. Follow us on Twitter at superheroespeak, Facebook.com superheroespeak, and also the hashtag Podern Family. It's a group that we're a part of. It's all nerdy podcasts. You'll see us hashtag that in some of our tweets. Check those guys out too. I mentioned So Wizard is one of them. We're actually going to be soon launching a full website, and it's going to be awesome. So keep an eye out for that. So what were you going to say, Ben?
Oh, I was going to say that, we've seen Hugh Jackman playing this part of Wolverine for, you said, like 17 years now?
Yeah,
and
17 years.
In all that time, we've never seen him don the cowl.
No, that's true. That yellow and black cowl.
I think
hold on. We did get a tease of it in the second Wolverine movie, but he never put it on. And why didn't he?
It seems like those wing things on this cowl, they could get caught.
No.
Oh, kind of like
you're reaching so hard for this. You're just like your fingers are outstretched. We have a Snowmageddon Paka Ragnarok to get back to. Okay, why don't you just end it? All right. I have to go out and shovel snow now. There's going to be like 5 feet when we wake up in the morning.
You don't understand, John. Ben lives for the setup.
This is the only reason I do the show. It's
I know,
just this.
You're trying just so hard.
So you were saying, Ben?
I'm just saying that the wings on the traditional Wolverine cowl, they could get caught in the door as he walks through them.
Kind of like a cape.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, boys and girls, don't let your cape get caught in the door. Have a good week.